We are here because we are dedicated to helping the entire CrossFit community. Determined to elevate coaches, box owners, athletes, and everything in between, we believe that this mission will begin right here, right now. While this time and this goal begins with you, our hope is that you take this fire ignited within you and weave it into your own life with the same unrelenting passion to give those you have the privilege of coming in contact with the best hour of their day.
All right. You know what I was just thinking, Danny, as I hit record? I have you in my phone the same way you have yourself on Zoom here as Danny Soul, but that is not your given name.
That is correct. That's not my birth name.
But everybody refers to you as Danny Soul.
That's my street name, dude.
But I believe it's like Lopez Calleja.
Lopez Calleja. Yeah.
Calleja.
It's Lopez hyphen Calleja.
So you have the same last name as the guy we were just talking about, Santiago. Or very similar. His is Callejas.
Yeah, his is Callejas. I believe he's Colombian, but I think Callejas, it might be like a Nicaraguan last name. My whole last name comes from my father's side, and it's like a mix of Cuban and Spanish, I believe.
What's your mother's side? Because as long as I've known you, I just kind of lump you into the classic, white boy category. But I forget, like, you have a different, ethnicity.
I'm Cuban, B.
Yeah, you don't. I think you hear the accent every so often, but not a lot. Like Santiago, I mean, he sounds like he still lives in Cuba.
Yeah. I was born and raised in Miami, obviously, but my first language was Spanish, just like many first generation Cuban Americans are. That was my first language, and but like I've always gone to school in English, so I think that's why I probably don't have that accent. And I obviously don't speak as much Spanish as I used to when I was a child. Like my grandparents only spoke Spanish and stuff.
Are you raising your boy bilingual?
Not as much as I would like to. My mother speaks to him in Spanish a little bit. My fiance's mom speaks to him in Spanish, and he hears it around a lot, and he's kind of grown up like that, but he's not totally fluent. He can't read in Spanish.
But before we dig in, tell me a little about this. When we were texting, you're like, hey, he's got a recital. And then I go online and see he's playing like the Misfits. What do you play? The Misfits and the Chili Peppers?
Yeah. So
what kind of recital is this? Was not your classical piano recital that I was envisioning.
He does actually play classical piano as well. He's gone to a music school since he was 4. And he's always bounced around between piano, playing the drums, and taking voice lessons. And he continued doing his music lessons during the quarantine, and it got really, I don't know, he got burned out on it. He was like not engaged, and he was very bored. And I talked to both of his music teachers, and we decided to show him more of the music that he liked in his music classes. And when they started working with him on like the music that he actually likes, rather than like classical piano stuff and jazzy stuff that they were working with him on, his entrance changed completely. And they took a risk. They let him do a Misfits song and a Red Hot Chili Peppers song for his recital.
As you're saying that, I'm thinking, because I grew up, I know people don't know a lot about the fact that you were a pretty prominent musician. You're on Spotify. What was the name of that band?
That band is called Aversion. That's on Spotify.
Yeah, I remember you showed me one time. But I think anything, I hear about it a lot from the wrestling world, like amateur wrestling, high school wrestling, of like, don't drink water during practice, and running 3 miles gets you prepared for rest, and obviously those of us that understand CrossFit and strength and conditioning realize that's old school.
Mm-hmm.
And but it's the same in any field, because it's the same in music. I know I grew up, and you probably grew up the same way, where it's like 3 Blind Mice and Mary Had a Little Lamb, and I'm like, here I am listening to Me, the Grateful Dead or whatever, and it's like, you're making me play this music I don't really care about. So that's really cool that and maybe that's part of the pandemic, right? Maybe because of the pandemic, the music teachers were a little more open-minded there.
Yeah, I mean, look, for half of it, he was doing drums on Zoom twice a week. And I would like listen in, and he was just not engaged. He was dropping his sticks all over the place. He's just not paying attention, not dialed in. And after a few months, I told him, I was like, look, if we can't find a way to do this in person, we're just gonna have to hold off for now. And that's when they decided to, introduce him to some more of the rocker stuff that he's into. And man, he has his ability to catch a tune and to play along, it's doubled in the last few months since they allowed him to do that. It's a really cool place. They they took a risk. Look, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Californication, kind of like a PC
pop. It's pop, yeah. Pop.
Yeah, it's a pop rock ballad at this point, right? Misfits, Scream, sung by Michael Graves, not even Glenn Danzig. That's like a more obscure later Misfits song. It's insane that they allowed him to do that.
That's cool.
Yes.
That's
he's super pumped to do it.
Well, the reason I asked you to come on, I text you, randomly, I'm sure for you, but you are someone, I don't check Facebook a lot, but your posts are always for some reason popping in, probably because of whatever the algorithm is, I like them. And you had recently posted something about the Open that I'd like to hear your opinion on. But more importantly, I was kind of talking to a lot of people about Matt Fraser being on the Joe Rogan podcast, and you chimed in on that. And I think you're always surprising, even as we were talking about the pandemic earlier, about how, I don't want to say it's surprising, that's probably not the right word, but you're very open-minded in a lot. And I think you're one of those book by the cover type of people. Like you see Danny with the shaved head, his tattoos from his neck down, you're like, all right, cross the street, right? But yeah. I'm always, and even when I was working at your box in Miami for level ones, which by the way, I think I've told you, that's where I met my wife.
Yep.
At the tin box. Yeah, that was like when it rained there, you couldn't hear anything. So I've always had and I've moved a few times since then, and I'm always on an effort to get rid of my clothes. But the one shirt I always hang on to is an old school CrossFit Soul shirt with it's got like the Indian head on it, like a traditional looking Indian head. And I've almost worn it out, but it reminds me of some good times. I had some great times at your box. But actually, another tangent. I was one of the very first seminars I ever worked when I was still in New York. I came down to Miami midway through the squat breakout group. And for those of you that have taken the level one, that's 2.5 hours into the weekend. I'm like looking at these three people, and I was like, "You don't speak English, do you?" And they were like, "No English." I was like, "Oh shit!" I've been and that was really eye opening to me to learn. Hey, I got to use some visual cues. I got to use some tactile cues. It's important to remember that. We talk about you never know what someone else is going through type of mentality, but hey, you never know what language someone speaks. Anyway,
that's how it goes down here.
Anyway, I really liked what you said about both. Before we dig into Fraser on Rogan, tell me about your little rant about the Open, because I'm anxious to hear. I would classify you as a little more of a competitive box. You guys have programming that's out there, right? People can buy the Soul programming, not just for CrossFit, but for lifting as well. Right. Correct about that, right? So, what was your rant about?
So in regards to the Open, right when they made the announcement, immediately my phone started blowing up. Coworkers, coaches, athletes, just friends that own gyms, friends in the space. And it was overwhelmingly negative, and I am a very big critic of CrossFit. I mean, my whole life revolves around CrossFit, to be very honest with you. So I have really high expectations as well. I don't just put my opinion out there just for the sake of hearing myself speak. I'm a really big advocate of waving the CrossFit flag in a positive way. And I also have very high expectations, but I was being inundated with a lot of negativity in regards to the first open workout that was announced. And it was a lot about the handstand walk thing and people just being kind of over it, I think. You know, a lot of people have been in, you know, this sit and wait position in regards to CrossFit HQ and the direction where things are going. And I think Dave had a really big opportunity to do something. And, you know, maybe there were some people that are let down by this new movement or movement standard, I guess.
Yeah, you know, and I got to be honest, I'm a little removed. I coach at the box down the road. I love it there. They're not nearly as competitive as you guys. They have a couple people that try hard. I mean, not that everyone doesn't try hard, but you know, trying to make it to the next level. I saw the workout and I didn't blink. Like I didn't, to be quite honest, other than your post, I didn't realize there was any backlash. I mean, double unders have been a staple. I mean, they were in the very first open workout, you know, 11 years ago with snatches. Yeah, I thought when I saw it, I was like, oh, that's cool. They're doing it so you could do this anywhere.
Yeah.
So what was the big gripe?
Look, I think there's two things, and it's a very challenging position that Dave and a lot of these people are in at CrossFit HQ, is they're trying to check the box that you just said. It can be done everywhere. But there's another side to this, and the CrossFit Open is they're trying to make it as inclusive and as possible for athletes that make CrossFit a career. This is also step or stage one in their competitive year. And trying to have both of those two things intersect is very challenging. And from their perspective, I do think they have a point. The point is, I mean, it's not a fitness test. It is a CrossFit test. It's not really a fitness test. And for the first score or opportunity for you to have a ranking for the year, for it to be that, I understand their mindset. And, you know, some of the people's first response being like, really, you know, so you know, Jason, that is not my opinion.
No, hey, you're on your because you're open-minded, but you do form an opinion. But like you alluded to earlier, I do think I could have reached out to many people about Fraser and Rogan. I reached out to you for that reason. I think you're open-minded, but you do form an opinion and you're not afraid to state it. And for anyone that's unsure about, you know, find Danny on Instagram or Facebook, where I see a lot of your longer rants. And that's why.
Yeah.
But I guess my question, and not you answer, but I know you're answering for those people. I mean, to me, it's like, it's just another movement. I get it's gymnastics and it's, you know, it doesn't require a whole lot of skill, but the thing I've always said over the years, and I think last year was the best example of it, is the fittest rise to the top. And I haven't looked at the leaderboard. There's always a group of people that, yes, they excelled in this one workout. And I get it. It's a very limited competition. It's 3 workouts versus 5. There may be a 2-parter in there, who knows? But, you know, 3 weeks versus 5. Yeah, if someone like me maybe outperformed how I would have done if it were, say, 135-pound snatches instead of the wall walks. But, you know, what would they want to see instead of that? Would that be a good solution? Hey, 1 snatch, 10 double, like, is that what they're looking for? Just a more well-balanced workout? I mean, there's still 2 more, potentially 4 more workouts that are going to be scored.
I would imagine so. And me putting that out there was more of like a battle cry, trying to keep my team group of followers positive, because I had a lot of those people that were being overwhelmingly negative, you know, and I think it's the athletic brain oftentimes, you know, it sets us up sometimes for success, but sometimes failure. And sometimes it's the athletic brain's first instinct is to be negative. You know, that happens a lot with these guys, you know, so it's kind of a battle that we're always trying to fight. So I get it, you know, but again, it's ultimately not my opinion.
But let me ask you again, speaking for them, is there any workout that would have come up where they would have been like, this is great? Like, a lot of times those people that are upset about that,
they're going to be upset no matter what.
Yeah. And then also, what's your stance on the fittest rises to the top? Like I said, in any given CrossFit Games year, like the year they made the cuts, I believe 19 recently, sure, if they would have put a ruck event first, the cut looks very different than after a workout that requires legless rope climbs and snatches. So I get that. I think that does get overlooked when you just blindly say the fittest rise to the top. But over the course of a full competition, I mean, look no further than the same two people won 9 out of the last however many games, 12, 13 years of the games, Froning and Fraser, because no matter what Castro threw at them, and part of those years included the Open, I believe a couple didn't, Froning and Fraser have won, 80% of the Open of the games.
Right. So I do think that there are people who are going to complain no matter what, and they're going to have something to say no matter what happens. And you are absolutely right. It is not the fittest who tend to have that response. And if they do, they oftentimes won't make it public.
And they do. You see it on social, a handful people will complain.
A handful for sure. But as a whole, I don't think that the real fittest in our space, and we're talking about two people, you don't see them act like that. And really that's part of the message that I put out to my followers as well, is, if that is your goal, to be there one day, you're not just trying to work out like those people. The same kind of energy and the same kind of persona that they put out there, you got to take notes from that as well. And you don't see the fittest do that. I will say this is, you're absolutely right about the fittest and that the cream will rise to the top. For me, I don't coach those people. And I have a very realistic view of where my guys are at, where I am at as a coach, where my program is at, what we have the ability to do. And those are not our people. So some of those things have a much greater impact on the people that I coach, versus some of those people that are at the top level of the sport. I don't have a top 10, top 5 male or female right now,
No, fair enough. You have to respond to the people and I would say while your box is competitive, it's still a very standard box. I mean, to me, it exemplifies what a box should be right now in 2021. You have the perfect blend. And if anyone's ever been to Seoul, if you've not been, you should check it out. I mean, people go to Miami all the time, but you have that great blend of old school CrossFit with not only just new school CrossFit, but also creating your culture. I mean, if you're watching this video on YouTube, wherever room you're in right now is what your box looks like.
Yeah, pretty much.
But I love it. I mean, the box is you. And you know who else does it super well is David Osorio, CrossFit South Brooklyn. And I think you guys are very similar in a lot of years. And I think there's probably that overlap of the type of person you are and the cultures you belong to. You want to show that. I'm sure you have people that don't care about metal music or whatever. I don't think it's called metal, or tattoos. But I mean, if you see the people that come in every Saturday to work out, there's like 7 Dannies.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you attract your vibe, and I think that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, look, here was the mission behind creating our gym the way that we did. We wanted to create a place where we felt comfortable hanging out in. And I know that if I make a place as cool as it can be, a place that I would like to train in and spend literally my whole day in, I know it'll attract like-minded people. So we're not all, trying to solicit and look for like a bunch of retired punk rock old guys to come work out. But that is that happens a lot.
Yeah. Rumor is you have to have at least one American traditional tattoo to work out at CrossFit. So, no, and I think like my favorite time of the year was always like Halloween. You'd show up and there'd be like those fake cobwebs. They may have been real, I don't know, but cobwebs everywhere. So
yeah, we go in on Halloween.
I want to dig into this because this is actually why I reached out to you. Fraser was on Rogan and the affiliate world lost their mind, as always. And I learned a lot from it on multiple levels. I want to hear kind of where you would start with it. For one, you're probably like me. You didn't know it was coming, and all of a sudden it popped into I forget if it was like my Spotify feed or my Instagram feed, but I was like, oh shit, Fraser was on. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I saw it on Instagram first as well. I am an avid Joe Rogan listener. I listen
Same.
to probably an episode or two a week. It takes me a couple listens to get through these 2 to 3.5 hour long episodes. So it's a lot of background for me. I'm not like a obsessed Rogan guy. I'm not like posting on his Reddit and commenting, and I'm not like the Baba Booey version of a
No, but I think we probably have similarities where I look at the guest.
Yeah.
If it's a guest I'm like interested in or no, I might listen to the whole episode of like you through my warm-ups before I change it to music and all that. And then I listen to probably almost 90% of his clips, regardless if I like simply because I find Rogan that knowledgeable about so many different areas that I'm like, okay, I want to hear what he has to say. Although too much of it is about COVID lately, but
yeah. I mean, look, UFC, jiu-jitsu, training, science, like he checks a lot of boxes. At least a lot of his guests do.
Right, exactly.
I understand the flaw in like consuming too much of one person's media. So I try to not only listen to that. It's very easy to only listen to Rogan because it's so much out there. It's, what is it? Sometimes 4 3.5 hour episodes per week. It's a lot. But anyways, yeah, I saw it on Instagram and I was like, holy shit. And I saw it so early that it didn't even pop up on my Spotify feed yet.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I couldn't get it to pop up. I was like, oh, this is weird. But whatever. Eventually it popped up. I listened to it that day. I had like a longer training session in the garage and it just made sense. And I was excited about it because I thought that Rogan's first CrossFit guest was going to be Rich. They've exchanged comments here and there on Instagram. I believe it's been circulated by people. And I thought that it was going to be Rich. And at first I was happier that it was Matt. But I think,
for what reason?
I don't know. I would rather hear from Matt in a long form podcast. I feel like Matt would be more honest, and that's always what I'm looking for. And that's what we got out of him, is a lot of honesty, and look, much like the opinion about the Open, I'm not saying it was all bad that Matt was on there. I think that he did exactly what I would expect someone like Matt to do, but I wish he would have done a little bit more. And that's just like my CrossFit fanboy community side speaking.
I 100% agree. I think obviously, like you saw, so many people just immediately reacted negatively. And I agree with the statement that I've seen from some, like Matt doesn't know us or the CrossFit community anything. I mean, yes, the community is what's allowed this, but at the same time, his mindset that you kind of alluded to earlier really is what allowed it. Somebody right before we got on here was asking me like, what? I didn't find it bad. They're box owners, and they said, what did you find? Like truly what stood out? And I said, one thing that really stood out to me was how little Rogan knew about CrossFit. And I think that is an opportunity because like you just said, UFC, jiu-jitsu, I mean, science, fitness, he's a part owner of On It. I think he's somehow involved in Killcliff now. It's like, if this guy doesn't know what CrossFit is, and I'm sure he's got people chirping in his ear all the time, imagine the demographic that still doesn't know what CrossFit is. Because I have no doubt the right person would convince Rogan why CrossFit is so great. Like, I don't know exactly what he does for training. I see bits and pieces. He uses those expensive looking kettlebells, but I mean, the On It bells, But I mean, from a science perspective, how much better programming is there? I mean, measurable, observable, repeatable doesn't get any better than CrossFit.
He does CrossFit.
Yeah, and you know what? That is a great way. It's the same reason I was upset with affiliates dropping off, because I'm like, don't say you're not doing CrossFit and then program for him. He does CrossFit with bells, He talks about the road bike every episode.
Every episode.
I mean, the one thing he said was like, I did 8 Tabatas in a row. I was like, nope, then you did 0 Tabatas, because if you did 1, you'd be done. But yeah, there's definitely, and going back to what I was saying, I think the big picture to me is, as the CrossFit community, we don't want to give people more of a reason to hate on us, right? We're already like vegans, where it's like we talk too much about it, and people are like, shut up already. Matt, I believe if someone was on the fence, convince them not to do CrossFit. That's what bothered me the most. Yep.
I mean, I agree with you fully. Look, I personally know Matt. I know his story. I've heard it. So Matt didn't say anything new or different that he hasn't said on pretty much every Matt Fraser documentary at this point either. And like I said, that's what he's got to share. He's never been a huge fanboy of CrossFit. He's and even his story of of how he started. I was actually a weightlifter. I played a real sport, and then I just did this thing on the side, won $200, and I figured I'd keep trying to do it and win a little bit more money, and here I am. And it's like, what? That's your story? But that's the energy that he puts out there, and I'm telling you, that's what has made that man a champion.
So maybe part of it is, you're right. I've not sought out interviews with Matt. I haven't even watched The Fittest, the newest documentary. So maybe if you were a little more aware of what he was telling people to begin with, it wouldn't have come off as such a shock. I think, like we've been saying, a lot of it was we just were like, cool, the first CrossFit representative ever on this tremendous platform. We're going to, and then all of a sudden it was that. So.
But let me ask you this, Jason. Let me ask you this. Would you have preferred that it was Greg? Not me.
I'm very biased about Greg.
I love Greg. No, dude, no. No one loves Greg more than me. That's not true. There's a lot of you guys that love Greg more than me. However, I don't know, especially not Greg from the last 2 years. I don't think so. I think
he would have went off on a tangent about carbohydrates and SCA. I agree.
And the buckets of death and Gatorade and the same shit that he did when I went to Canada. And I was like, what the fuck did this guy just say?
I was like, is someone getting this? Because it's over my head.
But then not Dave either, to be honest. You know who I think probably would have been the best guest?
I'll tell you who you're gonna say. Nicole.
Tia
would be great as well. Yeah,
it would have been Tia from the perspective that Tia's partner is a coach. So she's plugged in to the coaching world, that psyche. She could have represented us better from that angle, because Matt represented us very poorly. Like, if you are listening to that podcast and there's potential for you to look for coaching in the CrossFit space, you probably didn't, because he made coaching overall look very poorly, except for himself and his secrets and his methods.
Which he, by the way, is about to sell.
No shit.
So, and I think, let me just say one thing. If people are that upset, don't buy his programming. That's how I interpret it. Like, you don't like it? This is a free market. Go buy Danny's programming or search out Proven or whatever it is.
Yeah. Well, look, so Tia from that perspective would have been great. Guess what? We forget Tia was involved in box ownership back home in Australia. She could have spoken about it from the affiliation perspective, and it's something that she's actually educated about. She could have spoken about it from the perspective of having had taken her level 1 and wanting to, not because he just wanted to smash some chick or whatever he said. She could have talked about it from the athlete perspective as well. All things that I don't think were very well represented. Like, if you're listening to Matt's podcast, your takeaway of the athletes are they all use drugs except for this guy. Everyone's juiced up except for the best dude. So
yeah, and I mean, and in fairness, whether it was Glassman, Castro, or Nicole Carroll, like I recommended,
I agree with that last one too.
There has to be some name recognition behind it also. Otherwise, in other words, especially on the Joe Rogan podcast, he doesn't just have someone on. I mean, granted, some of his people do, but that would be very self-serving, where Matt kind of yeah, CrossFit was beneficial in his life, obviously, but he has no interest. He's not going to gain anything other than people following his program. Where Nicole or Dave, you or I think, are so biased the other direction that
Yeah.
we would have simply been trying to convince Rogan why CrossFit is the greatest, and even Tia might have been in the middle. But I think I agree with you. Should be great. And the other thing I noticed, other than Rogan doesn't know enough about CrossFit, is there's clearly a disconnect somewhere between the competitive side and the affiliate side. I mean,
Yeah,
like
I don't feel that at all. Those
Fraser
intersect.
knew very little. At one point, he said it might be a 3-day seminar. He said he doesn't know that it's what the affiliate fees are. They were struggling to kind of really define an affiliate versus a franchise. And I'll tell you, before you go on, I think the thing that upset me the most on the entire podcast was when Fraser kind of laughed about the fact that it was a 2-day, just a 2-day seminar. That's all you need. I started training people in 1996 out of the back of a textbook and was given old men rhabdo, at the local club fit that I didn't know I was giving them rhabdo at the time. The 2-day seminar in the CrossFit world is still light years beyond what any other company is doing in the training space.
Yeah, I agree.
That was what bothered me the most. But go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, the athletic side and competitive side of CrossFit, and then the affiliate side of CrossFit, for me, has never been a confusing thing. This is how I've always looked at the model of affiliation in CrossFit as a whole. Is CrossFit provides someone like me a bunch of resources, and it's up to me to use them however I want. That is what affiliation is about. It's not, I don't have to do the open. I don't have to serve 60 plus people. I don't have to do these CrossFit.com workouts. I don't have to host CrossFit HQ to come to my gym at all. I don't even have to put it anywhere. I can pick all these pieces and figure out how they intersect with my population and my culture. And that's what we've always done. CrossFit pivots and we make the decision on whether that's going to work for us or not, and that is the confusing thing for the general population. And I think it's always going to be this way. And until HQ makes some big, name changes, I don't know that they're going to figure that out. Like, if you ask the lay person, CrossFit is CrossFit. They don't understand the difference between, the CrossFit Games, the Open, the CrossFit gym down the street. And I think it's mostly due to the name. They're going to have a really hard time with that always. It's always going to be an uphill battle.
Yeah, especially, as you think about it, the difference between a franchise and affiliate. People love fast food because whether you're in Miami or China, you're getting a Big Mac. Right. Where, if you started going to a handful of different ones and you're like, this Big Mac is not nearly as good, you'd start thinking maybe all McDonald's aren't as good. So, yeah, that's the difference in the affiliate model. And I think I love the affiliate model for that reason, the same reason as you. But that's where, based on the conversation, Fraser, talked up, I think it was Champaign or Champlain Valley, which is in Vermont. When I was in the Northeast, I knew them. But basically made it sound like I found the one good box in the country. All the rest are shit, right? And luckily, had I not walked into them, and had this, virtuous form as an Olympic lifter,
yeah,
which, by the way, caused you to break your back or other injuries multiple times, like I wouldn't have been where I am today.
I'm laughing because my very dear friend, Jenny, and his
that's Jade's box.
Danny. Yeah, that's their gym.
That's why I knew them. Yeah.
Yeah. And it is a good gym. It's like our same energy in Vermont. It's like a very similar mindset. You're not going to walk in and they're listening to Madball or whatever, but it is still very much of a similar vibe of a gym. He's very smart programming, good balance of competition and community. His partner's a multiple time CrossFit Games athlete.
Yeah, I didn't when he said the name until you just said that. Yeah, I mean, those that don't know, Danny Horan. Well, I think they're married now, so she may have a different name. Like Danny just said, multiple time individual. And did quite
And
well
team.
at the games too, and team.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then Jade is a phenomenal coach and programmer. So
Yep.
yes, Matt got lucky, and I have no doubt if he would have walked into the wrong box and been turned off to CrossFit, he's not on the Rogan podcast, you know, all these years later. But I think it could have just been better stated, and he just probably doesn't know any better. Like, that's the beauty of the affiliate model, is there are going to be some shitty CrossFit affiliates, but that's up to you. Even the shittiest may be your favorite because they do listen to Madball or whatever goes on, right? So there's the pros and cons of being an affiliate model, and the cream rise. Coach Glassman, as long as I know him, said it. That was his mantra. You know, the cream will rise to the top. And you know where have we seen it more so than during the pandemic?
Oh God, that has never been. You know, I've always battled with the fact that Greg had said that. Especially like, look, we live in the United States. I drive outside and you see a Walmart, a Target, a McDonald's, and a BK on every corner. It's hard to live in a city like Miami and really say, believe, and feel that the cream rises to the top. But I will say, you know, 11 years after I heard Glassman have that, you know, give that speech at the first Phil Fest, or 10 years or however long it's been, and he did his cream will rise to the top speech to the affiliates, that it could not be more the truth than you see now post-pandemic. That is absolutely the only CrossFit gyms that have survived, are the best ones, at least in this city.
Yeah, they were the ones that were building that community where, like we were discussing earlier, you know, they continued to pay their membership while the box was closed, but the box owners were paying rent. So
Yep.
you know, it was definitely eye-opening to me, the boxes that did a lot of the shortcuts along the way, whether it was, you know, discounted rates or the, you know, boot camp type stuff that went on and never built that strong community, definitely got punished during the pandemic. But
Yep, in a really way.
you know, and that was it. It was like, okay, I think Matt was alluding to that. It just wasn't coming off very strongly. Were there any other points that you heard about from, you know, your family, your friends, your members about it?
Not really. You know, my thing is this. That was the longest form / largest platform CrossFit has had at this point. That is the most insight someone is going to have to CrossFit up to now. And my only beef is that I wish it was represented in a better light and with someone who had a little bit more enthusiasm about things other than how they do in competition, to be honest. You know, that's just me being picky. I always want CrossFit to be represented well. And when I feel like it's represented, you know, in a corny way or just arrogantly or whatever, I'm just, you know, I would prefer it wouldn't be. I think it's easy enough for us to look stupid as it is, you know, so I'm like really big and picky that we're presented in a positive light. You know?
Yeah, I think, you know, the analogy a lot of people make, it's like you find this band, I'm sure you went through this as a kid, where it's like this band is playing this local spot, no one knows about them, then they have a big hit, and all of a sudden they're touring. And sometimes someone would be like, well, if I asked you, hey, give me a Misfits song to listen to, you'd give me the one that you think would hit home for me. And that's what we wanted here. Oh, this is a great opportunity. Let's show the world why CrossFit's so amazing. And then it was kind of a letdown.
Well, look, before Matt, Rogan has had on 2 other guests that did not like CrossFit. He had on, I think, one of GSP's strength conditioning coaches, who's not an advocate.
Faziz,
Yes.
something like that. Yeah.
And then he had another strength coach that was speaking very poorly about Olympic lifts being done for time, you know, non-technically, et cetera, et cetera. This was the chance to kind of set some of those wrongs right. Like, they could have had that debate. That would have been worthwhile, I think. you know.
And the truth of the matter is, though, Fraser would not have been the person to have that debate. Fraser is so narrowly focused on competition in a great way. I mean, 5 firsts. I forgot the fact that he had 2 seconds. I mean, 7 years he was the top 2 fittest, on the planet. And,
I mean,
he moved.
I'll tell you what, from a technical perspective, someone being picky about the Olympic lifts being done for time, if you run a video of Matt performing Grace at 100 kilos, he's going to look perfect. Perfect. You know, that I agree. Maybe he wouldn't have been the best guy to have that debate, but watching some film of his with any of those guys, they would have no argument.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. I think that was the opportunity. Like, oh, CrossFit's bad for you. You're going to get hurt. Well, I was among the 2 best for 7 straight years, and I'm okay. Mm-hmm. And when I did Olympic lifts, by the way, I broke my back, and that dude ripped his hands off. You know what I mean? Like, so, I mean, that's where it was like, because he had no, what's the word I'm looking, he had no reason to promote CrossFit other than the fact that that's different, where you and I would have been, sounding the CrossFit alarms. He didn't really have to. And I will say this, he seemed to me, this is my interpretation, a little starstruck. And I see this a lot with the people on Rogan, where it's like, I don't agree with you, Joe. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. You see that a lot. So I want to keep this conversation going for 3 hours. I want to sound somewhat entertaining. I want this guy to like me. And I don't know, Matt, I've met him a handful of times, but I don't want to speak for him. But there could have been some of that as well. I know I can say whatever I am right now, and I could get on Rogan and be like, CrossFit's dumb. Don't do it. Like, Rogan might convince me of that.
Well, look, I speak my truth always. And there's a lot, by the way, that Matt said that is very true. And I will tell you that Matt genuinely, I'm not going to put words in his mouth, right? But I would put my money that Matt was genuinely offended by Greg Glassman not knowing who he was. And I think there's really good reason to feel like that. And I bet that story, by the way, I bet that shit is true. Because I don't in those circles, I've seen stuff like that play out, I
don't doubt that it's true. I know a different, all that went down about Greg over the summer. I've always had a different relationship with him. Not obviously, but at the same time, I don't think what he did is right. But I also feel like he got completely canceled when he's done a lot of good in this world, in the fitness world. But I think, that doesn't make up for your mistakes. He messaged me when I had my baby, but I don't also agree with you. I have no doubt he did not know who Fraser was. But going back to something you said about Matt, that's always been Greg's story. He never, once the games grew to beyond Aromas, I think he was like, I messed up. And he was always trying to pull back on the games. And in fairness to the affiliates on this level, yes, the games grow the box. I think there's no denying that. But Greg was always pro-affiliate and wanting to do the best for affiliates.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. From the guy's perspective, look, Matt can sit here and tell you, hey, man, I've also committed my whole entire life to CrossFit. And look, I'll tell you this, maybe if CrossFit was a bigger advocate of maybe he would have been a bigger advocate of they. Because I'll tell you, I've coached at the games. I've been in many back rooms. Remember, there's an organization that I just stopped working for before the pandemic. And that organization is the same organization that manages Matt and a lot of the biggest events in our entire sport, Loud and Live.
I didn't realize you stopped working for them. You're no longer with them?
I'm no longer with them, no. And I'll tell you that a lot of those stories that Matt said, they have a lot of truth to them from the Dave Castro perspective, so I could also see how he feels that way. CrossFit didn't, besides facilitating an environment for him to earn some money, like a lot of the big wigs at HQ really, I'll say Matt feels disrespected by them. And I think he let people know that on the podcast. Yeah,
and I don't know any of those stories, but I agree with where you're coming from. In general, I think that's probably an interesting take on it. I mean, life, right? Like, hey, I don't know your story. I don't know what you've dealt with. I, just like Glassman, only know Dave to be a phenomenal human being. I know he gets a lot of shit out there, and I I don't follow a ton of the game stuff on social media. I remember when Dave said Matt's this, but I also know he followed it up with, I didn't mean it. And I also think there's something to be said about, you and I are big WWE fans, right? There's something to be said about, no different than the UFC kind of taking in, hey, the storytelling and creating a heel versus a baby face. Dave definitely embraces that heelish persona. But if you knew Dave behind the scenes, you'd be like, man, this guy would give, the shirt off his back to you. So I think there's probably of like, hey, I've got to build up some interest in this. This dude's been running away with it for 4+ years. Let's make the world believe someone else can win it.
He's playing Dana White.
Yeah, exactly.
He should.
/ Vince McMahon, right?
Yes, as he should, for sure.
But I mean, everybody's clinging to that. Hey, Matt said Dave tried. First of all, I don't know the workings of the programming. I don't even, Dave tests a lot of workouts, I'm sure. I don't think he goes in. It goes back to what we were saying. Hey, Matt, if he's trying to program for you, what you've done is show him the fittest can do anything. There is, work on your weakness until they're your strengths. Because I don't think there's a workout Dave can program over and over that Matt doesn't win, or at least allow him to be fittest.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the one difference between someone that's in a position like Dave versus someone in a position like Dana White is Dave literally makes the rules. And when someone who makes the rules is saying things about your performance, you could also feel a way about that. That's not quite like Dana White, just the president sharing his opinion about Masvidal's tenure with the UFC. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I've always thought the difference with the UFC is there are other organizations you can go to. Most people, the average fan, just UFC is MMA, where really there's Bellator, there's Rise, and there's One. There's tons of independent scenes. Where with CrossFit, there's really only one there's no other sport out there where like the governing body is the name of the sport.
I know.
And it's definitely unusual where then one person can impact really the outcome. Because like we said earlier, Dave programs, he could have put that ruck first, and all of a sudden the dude from the obstacle course race is your front runner instead of seeing, you know what I mean? I forget it, Hunter McIntyre, right? No, but the point is, and you could take those 7 or 11 events, however many events there were, and you shift them around a little bit, you might have a different top 10. I think the podium would be there. But I also believe Dave is pretty fair, and he lives by the values of CrossFit and wouldn't want that.
Well, look, this is what I tell all my guys before the open. And this is what I opened up with Friday at 12 o'clock when I was briefing everybody before we did 21.1. And it is, every time you go to games.crossfit.com and you sign up for the open, you are essentially, now as an athlete, not as a general population person, not as this is where Greg and I are different, right? I don't call my clients athletes or my athletes clients. There is a distinction between you are an athlete. I'm going to talk to you like an athlete. I'm going to train you like an athlete. I'm going to have athletic expectations from you, right? You're on this track. And then my clients go in this bucket, right? So when I say athletes, I mean athletes. I don't mean general population people.
What do you call those people?
Clients.
Okay. Yeah.
Those are fitness classes. Those GPP, it's GPP programming. Those are not athletes at all. My athlete, if my athlete shows up late to 21.1, I'm going to have a really tough conversation with him or her, because I invest unlimited amount of time into some of those kids. So I'm going to have those expectations the same way a football coach would. I'm not going to think my clients are going to get the same treatment as these guys, Anyways,
yeah.
What I opened with on Friday is, when you go to games.crossfit.com and you register, you're subjecting yourself to whatever they want to do, So like understand that before you register, so you don't have all these little, hissy fits and complaints about this standard of the handstand, and you didn't like this, and there was no barbell this year, and there's none of this. Do a little bit of research, look into the history a little bit, and realize that what just happened is very on brand with Dave Castro. And if you don't know that, you're the problem.
Agreed. And going back to something you said earlier, you rarely see the top complain. They may throw out, I could point to Jacob Hepner talking about handstand push-ups a couple of years ago, or, but it's far and few in between, other than the guys that are getting popped for PEDs. You're not getting a lot of complaints. And I think you're right. You have to realize where you fall in this sport. While you train some athletes, they probably are also not, maybe a handful are pushing, the next level, but the majority are just like, I want to do my best. And, your best should include doing some wall walks in the off season, knowing we may see them again, right? For everybody.
I'll tell you, I will bet you money that you will see them at the games with a weight vest.
Yeah. And, that's a point that most people don't ever really appreciate, is the Open is a small portion of the CrossFit season.
Yeah.
Right. So back in the day, the regionals used to get a little heavier and a little more events than the games. I mean, if you showed up at the games and you were an average CrossFitter, you're going to get smashed because you're probably not doing the running, biking, and swimming necessary to compete there. But that's part of the season, which is why you see so much running at the games, because it's meant to fill out the entire season's worth of monostructural movement.
I think anyone that is being too reactive to 21.1 and the standard, and look, I don't love it either, right? It's not my favorite thing. I really don't love is you're going to see people on their third attempt at this thing just figure out a really bizarre hip pike position to just totally hack this thing. Like, this workout is not going to be won by the person who did the best wall walks or the person who was most fit with this or that. It's going to be won by the people who hacked the shit out of it. So yeah. I don't love it from that perspective. I don't love heavy hackable important workouts. I like simple workouts that can show us truly how fit you are. I
had people posting in my private group, Jersey Tony, about, hey, do you think this will count? And it's like, any movement where you can ask, do you think this will count? Maybe shouldn't be a move. I mean, you're not saying that about a snatch, right? You're not saying that about a back squat.
Yeah.
So I could see that perspective.
The people that are going to still have a big gripe with a workout like 21.1, they're not seeing the whole picture, and that's more than likely because they're probably not going to get past the Open.
Yeah,
that's a gut check. That sucks. But I'll say this, the changes that HQ have made competitively for developing people right now are tremendous. They're so good for a program like mine and so good for developing athletes, which is something that has not existed since regionals. The last 2 years, forget about the pandemic, the last 2 years of the sanctionals has been absolutely atrocious for the developing CrossFit athletes. It's only been good for the 1% in CrossFit. That's it.
And you think now, because I to be quite honest, I've not followed close enough. They're going back to regional events, but they're not run by home office, right? Like, they're sanctional events still, but you qualify. Do you qualify through the Open?
So you qualify. So the Open is now being known as, in the athletic circles, as stage 1.
Right.
That's the Open. Then top 10% of your continent moves on to stage 2, which is going to essentially be the same online qualifier that they did last year to qualify those top 5 guys for the games. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
It was heavy, and they did all the benchmarks, super heavy. That is essentially going to look like stage 2. Then from there, you qualify for a regional / sanctional. From there, you qualify for the games. So now we have
can the only thing is, can some people bypass stage 1 and 2 and just go direct?
Nope.
So what they've really done is say, hey, everyone can compete for 3 weeks. After these 3 weeks, we chop it a little bit.
Yep.
And I think from what you're saying, that's what we're going to see. Like you said I judged Hefner, for example, where it's like you got that awful Annie and friendly Fran or whatever, where now we can get a little more complex movements, a little more heavy, specific, like not everybody might have a GHD or a drag rope, and then eventually go live.
Yep.
That's interesting. Yeah. And I think that goes back to what you're saying. Like I've always said this, for a long time, there was a debate at the box. I don't know if you guys probably had it, where it's like, hey, should I drop the bar in between or go unbroken? And I'm like, hey, you know who doesn't ask about this? Rich Froning. This was back, Rich Froning.
Yeah.
If you're asking me this question, you're trying to sneak in. And not that, but it's the same thing you were saying. It's like, if you're at that level, you don't, it's the expression about like lions and sheeps, right? You don't concern yourself with that. And not that they're all sheep, but yeah, if you're complaining or you're upset about it, chances are you have a gap in your fitness and you need to improve it.
Yeah, exactly.
Hard to say that. It's hard to say that to people paying you. And by the way, where can people find your programming?
Everything about our programming, our online store, whatever it is on www.teamsoultraining.com. And then all of our socials are at Team Soul. For gym related stuff is CrossFit Soul.
Yeah, and check them out if you're in Miami. By the way, your partner, Sean, probably was happy about this workout.
Very happy about this workout. Yeah, he got to coach his ass off with me on Friday. Yeah, he was very happy about this workout.
But I mean, mostly because, for those that don't know, Soul Sean also is at CrossFit Soul, and part of the gymnastics crew. So I'm sure he crushed the wall walks.
Yeah, he did all right. He's actually about to compete at USA Weightlifting Masters Nationals this weekend.
Oh, so he might not have gone super hard on it.
Yeah, he took it super easy on it. Very, very, very slow, to be honest. He still probably beat me. But anyway, I think that was good. I think it was important. And I'm really glad I had you on, because I think you did open my eyes to a few things, and hopefully the listeners as well. I think ultimately the reason so many people got upset, with the Open and or with Fraser, is because this is something we all care about. And when you care about something, you're more likely to get upset about it. Yep. And that's, right? Dude, that's in the same vein of where we were at talking about my speech to my guys about 21.1. I said that also. I said, you have a lot to say because you care. And that's really fucking good. Now let's figure out a place to channel that energy. Let's use it in the right way, not negatively. You're never going to hear Matt Fraser, whether you like his podcast or not, talk shit about a workout before he does it. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, take that energy and climb up the wall with it. But, and it's so different. If you're listening, it's like, hey, some stranger out on the street, says something, you're annoyed for 5 minutes, your significant other does it, you're fighting because you care. You care more about the things you love, and whether it's, punk rock music or CrossFit, we all have, and it's something that we're allowed to have an opinion on and can easily voice it. But I think the best course of action is, be quiet and just do your best.
Yep, always.
All right, Danny. Well, I appreciate you coming on to talk about this stuff. It was really great. And, keep it up. I look forward to hopefully seeing you again soon.
Yeah, man. Likewise. Thanks for having me on, dude. I genuinely appreciate it.
So you never miss an episode of the podcast, subscribe to our YouTube channel and on all major podcasting platforms at Best Hour of Their Day. Thank you so much for tuning in and for being a part of the best hour of our day. See you next time.